Hi there, this is Kevin. Thank you for coming along for part 2 of our survival trapping series. In part 1 we covered the broken stick deadfall. Thought it worked out fairly well. There are a few issues with that trap that I didn't go over. The fact that it pulls the components into the trap, into the bed of the trap, taking up room in there, is a bit of a problem with that trap. But it is very simple to make, and I think it could be effective. Today we're going to go over the split stick deadfall, which is another fairly easy trigger to make. And it also can be used with a basket and a deadfalling device, much like a lot of these other triggers. To get to it, I'm going to start hunting for some materials. I'll be back with you shortly. Okay guys, I failed to hit record on the very first part here. But what I've done is I've gathered a stick, fairly straight, about thumb size, and I've cut the top end off of it just to have a nice clean cut. Now I'm going to go down about 7 or 8 inches, do the same thing, try to have a nice, fairly clean cut there. I'm going to end up with that, just a straight stick about 8 inches long. Okay, next, hopefully you can see this, I'm going to make a cut not completely in the center. I'm going to want my bottom part to be a little bit shorter. So I'm not going to quite go half. I'm going to leave my top end of the stick just a little bit longer than the bottom. I'm just going to cut that just like so. And now this could be done several different ways. If you had an awl, you could drill your hole before you even cut these. Or if you had a knife with a slender point, you could drill through it. You could drill your hole, because what we're going to need to do now is I'm going to take my saw and make a hole for a stick to fit into. And then this third stick will actually be our bait stick. So now I got to get started on that. Okay, so I've taken this rock, set it up here, try to give myself a little bit of support. What I'm going to do is try to start a groove with my saw. When you're doing this, be careful. You can catch yourself with this saw pretty easy, and it will put a pretty good cut on you. I'm just going to cut in maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and then kind of widen that up a little bit. Okay, so now hopefully you can see that there. I've got my 2 sticks, and I've got basically a slit cut in there. Okay, so now I'm going to take my saw, just try to work it around a little bit, widen that groove very carefully, work slow. I don't like how I have to have this saw pointed towards my hand here. I'm just basically going real slow here and kind of just filing that material off with the edge of these teeth. Working my saw around, giving myself a little bit wider of a groove there. I'm just going to keep doing that until I get both of these the way I want it, and then I'll talk to you then. Okay, so now what we have is this. And I'm going to have to clean these up. I'm going to make these basically the same with my knife. And I'm going to have to shave off a little bit of these ends, because I'm going to have a hard time finding a stick that's going to fill that gap. You want your stick to be the same size of your hole. So now I'm going to go find my bait stick, and then that way I'll be able to measure what size I need to make my hole. Okay, so I just found me a kind of a slender stick for my bait stick. I'm going to cut this trash off the end here. And then basically I'm just going to cut it kind of in a square. It don't have to be a completely perfect square, but I want these flat sides to fit into my groove for my hole in my split stick. You can kind of taper it to where it's thinner at the end and then gradually gets wider. That way when you go to stick it in here, you have a little bit of adjustment back and forth. Taper that end down a little bit and gradually make it a little bit wider going up to where we're just barely removing any material at all, just kind of flattening the side. and we may be able to get away without shaving anything off the top and the bottom. So now we'll see how this fits inside of our split stick. Okay, so hopefully you can see it. That's what we have there. Then we're going to take our bait stick, stick it in that little slot. Now you can see there's a lot of play right here before that engages. So we're going to want to trim this down. We want, when these two pieces, when this bait stick's sitting in here and this piece sits on top of it, we want the bait stick touching both sticks. We don't want that slop in there like that. So we're going to remove some material off of this, and hopefully that will give us our breakaway action that we need. Now we basically have all of our components made. We have our post stick, which is these two sticks, basically one stick that we cut in half and made a hole in, and then we have our bait stick right here, and we just basically carved two sides of that flat to fit into our groove. So you're going to fit that into your groove, and then you're going to place your top back on, and you'll see now that's a lot more sensitive. There's no wobbling in there, there's no play. When you touch that trigger, it's live action. So how I set this up is I'll just pinch everything in between my thumb and my finger. You get everything kind of lined up here. Find your angle that you're happy with. Takes adjustment. That's one thing about most of these traps, they all just take adjustment. We'll find that spot. Okay, so we got her set up now. Hopefully we have our bait stick jammed up in here enough and have enough tension to where whenever the animal comes through to grab this bait, it triggers and falls over. Now it broke my animal stick, so obviously the trap works, right?